Hey guys, this is Max7910. Today I'm going to show you how to make chord progressions, especially with a piano, more interesting. Let's first start off with the piano progression I just made, which sounds like this. As you can tell, it's really basic and it's also really thin. Let's first tackle the problem by making the chords less thin, basically more full, by adding notes in the lower octaves. So after adding notes in the lower octaves, especially the root note and maybe the fifth note, it sounds like this. So now it sounds a little bit more grand, a little more epic, but it still sounds a little too basic, and it also doesn't sound smooth or well connected. So here are now 2 tips to solve that problem. One of them is basically find chords that share the same note. So as you can see, the first 3 chords, which are playing the highlighted notes, are all sharing the E note. We can try and continue this line by adding an E note on the F sharp chord here, and then also adding the E note on the B chord here. The other tip, although it's really similar, is basically creating inversions of chords. Inversions of chords are nothing other than chords played differently, as in specific notes played on different octaves. So, for example, if I was supposed to draw here a C sharp minor chord, like this, and then an A. If I was supposed to draw here a C sharp minor chord and then an A chord, which sounds like this, it sonically sounds correct, but it doesn't flow smoothly because the pianist in real life would have to jump his whole hand from the C sharp chord to the A chord. And he can make his life much easier by inverting specific notes, as I mentioned earlier on, to different octaves to then make them flow a little easier. As you can tell now, these chords flow a little more smoothly because the pianist doesn't have to move his hand as much. So what we can do here is we can also create inversions in our piano roll, as in, for example, here, where then the C sharp note doesn't have to jump to this E note, but can also jump to this lower B note, making it flow a little more smoothly. Same goes to this B note on the E chord to the C sharp note, which is basically the 5th of the F sharp chord. This also applies for the E note on the E chord going to the 5th of the B chord, which is the F sharp. Another tip to make chord progressions more interesting is to create extra harmonies like sevenths or suspended chords. So let's first listen to the chord progression without any extra harmonies. So we created earlier on an extra harmony by adding the E note to this F sharp chord, which already makes it sound more interesting. Let's try and keep this trend going by adding, let's say for example, a 7th note on the A chord, which is the G sharp, and then let's also add another G sharp note here on the B chord, and maybe also remove the D sharp note so then it doesn't get too messy on the last chord. Let's now listen to the chord progression with the extra harmonies and also removing the extra notes here to make then the pianist play more within this octave. It definitely sounds now more interesting than the first chord progression that we heard at the start of the clip. And now a last tip is to maybe add notes which are already played later within the chord to then create some, I guess you could say, groove, like these ones here and here. Adding these notes which repeat the note will then sound like this. What I try to sometimes do is, when I have my chord progressions, is I try to find a note in the higher octaves which I can repeat as so, and make sure that this note can be played throughout the whole chord progression without having these chords played too many notes and then make it not sound as pleasing. I decided to go for the G sharp note. What you can also do to your piano chord progressions is something that I explained in one of my first tutorials on the 7910 channel, is to basically humanize these chords like so. Humanizing chords will then change the velocity on individual notes, making it sound a little more realistic as the pianist would play it, because a pianist is not like a computer that can play notes the same length all the time. But this only works for pianos or synths that have a velocity effect. In the end, the chord progression with some reverb on the piano sounds like this. If you'd like to know any other tips and tricks, let me know in the comments, and make sure to like and subscribe. See you next time.